Welcome back to AJ's Animal Fix. Today we are going to be rehoming my Honduran Curly Hair Tarantula, otherwise known as the Tilicado albopolosis. Controversial on how you pronounce it. I've heard all different types of things. It begins with T-L-I-L, so chew it up and spit it out however you want. I've even heard Chilicado. I call it Tilicado albopolosis. Like I said, this is the Honduran variety, so it's much darker and thicker and curlier. She's just a gorgeous, gorgeous specimen. So let's get into it. All right, guys, so we're gonna start off by catching up our spider. I'm gonna go ahead and get her out of this little critter container. She did just recently molt, and I swear to you guys, she like doubled in size. She's super gorgeous. One of my more docile tarantula species, so this shouldn't be too bad, but I want to get her out of this first because I want to reuse some of this dirt in her enclosure. Basically, I'm going to be putting her in a 8.5 by 8.5 by 11 glass enclosure. And you might be thinking to yourself, AJ, that seems like a more vertical enclosure, something for an arboreal species, but what I want to do is fill about 50% of the container with soil to give her all of that burrowing room. This is a terrestrial species. She's going to do a ton of burrowing. She's going to excavate all that dirt and move it up towards the top. Within a couple weeks, it's going to look like it's filled almost 3/4 of the way. And as much as you want to decorate these enclosures for your tarantula, make them look pretty, make them look cool, this species in particular is going to just completely rearrange it to however she wants. So I have an interesting method how I set these guys up. I kind of think ahead. I put some structure logs and stuff like that in there, but I sort of bury it up through the substrate because what she'll do is she'll excavate down and build around it, and it'll just give a lot of support to what she's going to create into her ultimate den. So let's go ahead and get her out. She's currently at the bottom of this thing here, so I'm just gonna carefully start pulling this stuff apart here. We're definitely going to be reusing some of this material. Whoa. We want to be super careful here. Don't actually bury her. She's right there. There you are. So we'll just go ahead and get her right out into the catch cup. Like I said, she's pretty docile. Probably shouldn't use these metal tongs. Let's go ahead and switch to the paintbrush. And I have handled her before, but she's got a bit of a feeding response. You see that? So she hasn't eaten in about a week, so her instinct right now is to feed. And if that was my finger down there, she definitely would have bit it. Oh, okay, she's not too happy right now. Her whole enclosure is kind of getting disturbed, so we don't want her to kick any hairs. Let's try to just get her up to the edge here, into the catch cup. As soon as she feels the other surface, she'll just go right in. She's very reluctant. She does not want to leave her enclosure here, so patience is a virtue. Just walk her right up into there. Now she sees where she's going. There we go. She's gorgeous. Let's go ahead and get that top on. Beautiful, beautiful spider. So now that we did that, let's go ahead and work on the enclosure. All right, like I mentioned, I'm going to be using a 8.5 by 8.5 by 11 enclosure. Not something that you would typically put this species in, but it's going to give me the room for all that soil that I want to get into here. So I want to get the soil up to about right here. And like I said, she's going to start excavating and bringing the soil up to the top as she digs her tunnels. So What starts as right here is going to look like it's up to about here in a couple weeks, just letting her do her thing. Now, I've mentioned this before, I don't like to use a lot of stuff like this, and it's fine if you use it, but I go for more of a naturalistic look in my enclosures. But what I want to do, and this is a little bit of an experiment here, is I actually want to bury this in the bottom corner like that. And what I'm hoping that will happen is she will eventually find it, and it'll give me a little window into her den down there. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put this immediately in the bottom of the enclosure here. And we can start adding our soil. Now I'm using creature soil. It's just what's immediately available at my local pet store. Repta soil works good too. All different variations of peat moss and cocoa fiber and all that kind of stuff works too. This is going to be a little bit more expensive, but I just find it holds humidity so well and it packs really well. So as they're excavating and digging those tunnels, I don't really worry about it caving in too much. So let's go ahead and get our first layer of dirt here, and then we're going to play around with some of our hardscape material here. I'm probably not going to use all of this, but I got all kinds of stuff, including this little donut shaped thing here that I think will look really cool. So let's just go ahead and get the first layer of dirt in here. These tarantulas are going to want a 60 to 70% humidity, and that sounds high, but it's really not. As long as you're keeping the soil moist, as long as you have a little water dish in there, it's gonna be perfect. I mean, you do need to spray down the enclosure every once in a while, but you're not doing it on a daily basis. This does not at all need to be wet. Personally, I use a screen top, and I know that's very controversial. Some of you have chirped me in the comments before. I just encourage you to do your own research. One person left a comment that literally sounded like a regurgitated Tom Moran podcast. And I like Tom Moran. I think a lot of what he says is very informational, especially because he raises up all those spiders and then projects information about it. Me personally, I fall more in line with some of the UK information, Dave's Little Beasties, the Dark Den. So for me, the screen top works best for the style of enclosure that I use that doesn't have the cross ventilation. I'm going to need that ventilation at the top. And to tell you guys the truth about cross ventilation, unless you have active ventilation going in your room, like a running fan or a ceiling fan, it doesn't matter how many holes you put in there, you're still not going to have cross ventilation, especially if you have all of these enclosures lined up against each other on a shelf. So I do agree with cross ventilation, but I also feel like if you don't have an active fan in the room, your best style of ventilation is going to be the screen top, or you can switch it to an acrylic top, just put extra holes so you're still getting that ventilation. I've never had an issue with a spider getting its leg caught or its claw caught in there. People claim to have those stories, but I've yet to speak to somebody who it personally happened to. And if it has personally happened to you, please share it, because I'm not saying that this is the right way. This is just what works for me. So there's information on both sides. There's credible spider keepers on both sides who argue the point. That's not really what I want this channel to be about, but if you do have information, please share it. If you're going to chirp me in the comments, I'm not going to get into an argument with you. I'm just happy that that works for you. But I think other people probably want to see the back and forth stuff. I would probably just save that for like a tarantula forum. I don't think YouTube is the best platform for that. So enough of me rambling. We're going to continue here. I'm going to get a little bit more soil. I'm actually going to put in the soil from the old enclosure right now and pull out some of these pieces of bark here. Now, I gotta warn you guys, this is a New World species, so it does have urticating setae or urticating bristles or urticating hair. They're not technically hairs, but that's okay. For the sake of this video, we'll just call it urticating hairs. So I gotta be careful here because she did just molt, and I've never seen her flick hairs, but they do kick a lot of hairs around into that molt mat, and I kind of feel my hand already starting to itch a little bit. So we're just gonna go ahead and pour this in right through the top. You can see the difference in that substrate that's already been used here. It's just clumped together so nicely. It really packs in and holds in the moisture really well. Alright, we're making some progress here. We got a nice amount of soil. Got that totally buried in there. Our little log hide. We'll see. It's just an experiment. I've never tried this before. You know, burying the little log hide like that to see if she would actually use it as like a little cavern, almost like a little window into what's going on. And that looks cool, doesn't it? We've got this perfect little window right here that we might be able to see her molt better or utilize it in a way that allows us to check her out in a little bit more detail. So I didn't really have a plan as far as the hardscaping. I've got some pieces here. This is stuff that I've collected over time. I feel like a piece like this is pretty heavy. It would look really nice up towards the top, but ultimately I don't want it caving down and crushing her or anything like that. So I'm going to start off with some of the lighter pieces of cork. This came from her old enclosure, and we're just going to go ahead and put that back in here. I'm going to go ahead and stack it right on top of here, kind of like supported by that log hide at the bottom. Actually, I think, yeah, this will work, something like that. And then I think what I'm gonna do is just kind of lay these guys crossed like this. Maybe something like this. Again, I'm creating structure underneath the substrate, something that she can work around and manipulate as she digs and burrows. She's gonna totally recreate this whole thing. It's gonna be amazing. And she'll either go down in this corner, this corner, this corner. Hopefully she goes down in this back corner, and that way she can find that little hide under there. That'd be really cool. So we'll go ahead and add some more substrate. Like I said, I really want to bring this substrate up. I want her to have all of this room to burrow and tunnel and do all that cool stuff. Open this over the top. And we'll just start pouring that stuff in there. Alright, that's pretty good, because like I said, it'll start here and then she'll start moving that dirt and it'll come up pretty quickly. So I really don't think we need any more than that. That's a pretty good amount of soil, I think. I want this tank to be one big, deep network of tunnels. So that's why I went with this vertical style enclosure with more substrate. It's almost like a fossorial setup. And as you can see, we can't really even see our wood structures anymore, but again, she's going to manipulate it, change it up. So we'll see what she does. Opposite all of that, I really wanted to use this piece right here because I was wondering if maybe she'd use it as like the start to her burrow. However, within a few molts it might be getting a little tight, but we'll go ahead and put it in there anyways. We'll see what she does with it. I think it's interesting looking. I'm going to add a little bit of this green sphagnum moss here because I want it to sort of hold in some humidity, and it really starts to like make the top come alive. It's gonna look good for a little while, but again, it's gonna get all mixed up and buried into the substrate. I'll go ahead and wet it down a little bit just so we can get some of that water to the bottom. I'm gonna just hit the corners. I like using this better than the spray. I don't really like filming videos using the spray bottle because it just blocks up the sides of the glass here. I can get it a little bit more accurately where I want to. Just use this water. I'm basically going to use this whole bottle here, just so we can keep that humidity like I was talking about. And I'll kind of just spin this around for you here so you can see. This is ultimately going to be the front that I'm going to be looking at most of the time. Obviously, we can turn it whatever way we really want to. But just to kind of show you what's going on here. It's getting heavy pretty quick. I mean, this is a lot of soil. There we go. So I'm deciding not to use the rest of this stuff here. I don't think it's necessary. Actually, I'm starting to get a little itchy, just a little bit. I'm going to reuse some of these smaller pieces just for aesthetics here in the beginning. We'll see what happens long term. See how she redoes this for herself. I think that's gonna look pretty good. I'll have to show you guys a top view too, because it looks cool from the top. And last but not least here, well, actually let me add a little bit more moss, just to kind of make it interesting. They come from a tropical climate, so they have a lot of plants and moss in their native land. They come from the scrublands actually, so yeah, let's get some of this in there. Oh, that's looking good. This is the same little deli cup water dish. Just gonna go ahead and rinse that out. You'll find these tarantulas always bury their water, and I have a theory that they do this on purpose to wick out the moisture, just so they stay moist. Also, if they're excavating, they don't have much of a choice where they can put the dirt, so kind of have to move this as we go along here. A little ketchup bottle. So that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. I'm not going to use any more moss or sticks. I'm not going to overdo it. I am going to create a little starter burrow in the back, because that's where I want her ultimately to go, so she can find that little log hide in the bottom. So I'm gonna go down about 2 inches and see if she works on it anymore. I'm also gonna do the same thing inside my little tube here. But I don't think she'll use this. I don't know why I think that, but I just don't think she will. So, alright, I'm gonna change up the camera angle here a little bit so you guys can see what I'm seeing from the top, and then we'll go ahead and get this little beauty inside the enclosure. I don't know if you see my cat running around here, but he's getting a little too interested, so I have to keep an eye on him. Hey, stop it! Going crazy, messing with the blinds. Alright, yeah, so as you can see, this is looking pretty good, in my opinion. Lots and lots of substrate. This is going to change dramatically, but for now, it's looking pretty good. Alright, let's go ahead and get this little girl in her new enclosure. Alright, little one. You have been such a good sport. See, I was really starting to think she was going to get big, but in comparison to my hand, she's not quite there yet. She just looks so much bigger than that initial tarantula that I got from the store. She literally like doubled in size from when I first got her, so very cool. I don't feel like handling her today just based on how much stress she's already gone through, so. Cat, oh my goodness. My cat is going absolutely insane messing with the blinds back there. Sorry about that, guys. I'm sure if you guys have spiders, you don't mind cats either. Maybe you're dog people, that's cool too. When you're touching a tarantula with a paintbrush like this, it's best to try to maintain contact rather than like poking and prodding. And there she goes. Man, she looks good in there. I like this setup, and I'm really interested to see what she does. And look at that, immediately just stuck some web on that hole. She's gonna do that. She's gonna explore this whole cage. She's gonna walk around the top, around all the sides. She's gonna make sure she understands where every little square inch of this enclosure is. And it's gonna be pretty amazing what she does, so. Very cool. Looks like she's getting a little close to the top. She's not gonna like how wet the enclosure is immediately. Doing that initial soak down, it's gonna take a while for the substrate to suck it all up and for the water to displace a little bit better. So if you have a tarantula that's doing this, just hanging on the glass and kind of avoiding going through its environment, you just have it a little too wet, or you're keeping it a little too wet. It's pretty normal to rehome a tarantula and for this to happen, because obviously you've just spread all that water around the enclosure and it's right there on the surface. It doesn't feel good to them. It feels like it's an environment that they should avoid. But like I said, within a few hours, within a day, everything's gonna sort of settle in. So she's starting to get a little close to the top. So, oh, didn't want that to happen. But you can see there's about 5 or 6 inches from the bottom to the top. So if she does have a little jump like that or a little fall, she's not in danger of rupturing her abdomen or anything like that. So you want to be careful. If you are trying to recreate this setup that I'm doing, make sure that soil level is at least halfway or a little bit beyond. You know, the tarantula should be able to basically expand at its furthest leg span from the substrate towards the top of the enclosure. So this is pretty good for her. We're gonna go ahead and lock down the lid. All right. And matter of fact, while I'm at it, I'm gonna go ahead and punch out the label. I like to label all of my tarantulas for the same reason I use those glass enclosures. I just want it to look clean. I want the tarantula to look like it's in a cool, natural environment. And I want the proper naming on there. It just makes me feel, I don't know, makes me feel good about how I collect them. And I think it's great if you're using plastic tubs, especially if you have like dozens of tarantulas or hundreds of tarantulas. Obviously, you can't get a glass enclosure for every single one. My collection's pretty small. It's under 10, so I've spent the extra money to get a glass enclosure when each tarantula has grown up to a size where it can be properly displayed. Obviously, if I have a sling or something like that, I'm keeping it in a small, cheap plastic container or like a critter cage or something like that, because it's gonna grow and it's gonna need something bigger. So once it gets to its ultimate home, I like to use the glass and I like to label it up. I got this thing for 20 bucks at Walmart. Super cheap, super easy to use. Just flick it on here. Ooh, it's not turning on. Maybe I hold it. Yeah. I only make a label every time I get a tarantula, and that's like not that often. So triple check my spelling here. Not that I couldn't just print another one, but want to make sure we got it right. This used to be called the Brachypelma albopilosum. And honestly, I don't know the story behind the name change. I'll have to research that. But I wish it would have stayed that way, because this is so hard to say. Tililtocatl. I say Tilicotl, and that just looks so wrong by the way it's spelled out, but it's what I say. So go ahead and print that baby out. Pretty easy to do. And this is my favorite part. We got ourselves a label. Now, the first time I went to peel back the label, I was so frustrated because I could not. It's like when you get a sticker and you can't get the little backing. And then I realized there's like a vertical slit. So all you have to do is fold this in half and you can immediately start that crease to break off of. So, all right. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. That was a fun little rehouse to put together. I just want to say I am not an expert in tarantulas. I am learning. This is my process. I'm just bringing you guys along for the ride. If you don't like the way I did something, if you don't like the way I explained something, or if you have difference of opinions, that's okay. We can all exist in this space. Share your comments, hit the like button if you liked it. Please hit the subscribe button if you want more videos. That I would really appreciate. All right, guys, I'll catch you next time.